I just want to talk a few minutes about patriotism. You remember 9/11? You know, the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, the field in Pennsylvania. Remember all the flags? They were everywhere. We put them on car windows, bumper stickers. We flew them on our lawns and porches and classrooms. They were everywhere. So what happened? Where did all the flags go? Of course, that's a rhetorical question because we all know where they went. We took them down and we put them away. So my question is, why did we put all the flags away so quickly? But first, let's try to understand why we put them up in the first place. No one made us go to the stores and buy American flags by the millions and put them on almost everything we could think of. Unlike some countries, no one ordered us to do it. We did it spontaneously. In fact, some of us did it instinctively. Men, women, and children of every race, religion, political persuasion, rich, middle class, less fortunate, young, old, whoever, bought flags and stuck them on and flew them from all kinds of things. We did it because vicious, heartless zealots from the Dark Ages had attacked us and murdered, yes, murdered, almost 3,000 of our fellow countrymen. And we were appalled and angry and defiant. And we were expressing our outrage and our solidarity against the killers. We displayed the flags to tell each other and the rest of the world that we were proud Americans and to show them we stood as one, determined to bring justice to the despicable terrorists who had attacked us. To see the flags everywhere and to witness the collective expression of patriotism they represented produced a strong sense of pride in me. Pride in my fellow Americans for responding so swiftly and unequivocally to the biggest, most atrocious attack on our homeland ever. These monsters had not even bothered to limit their attacks to military targets. Instead, they consciously and systematically chose to murder thousands of innocent, defenseless men, women, and children. At first, this great outpouring of patriotism by my fellow Americans reminded me of the America I knew as a boy growing up during the Second World War. Still, to be perfectly honest, part of me was uneasy. I was unsure that it would last. I saw a lot of flags during the long years of the Second World War, too, but there was at least one essential difference back then. There was a clear sense of national identity that had its roots in the same fundamental values held by our founding fathers. We had an unambiguous national character. In other words, we knew who we were and what we stood for. We understood very clearly that we were at war against enemies who wanted to destroy us, and the flags we put up then stayed up for the duration of the war. Another difference was that back then we often reminded each other to remember Pearl Harbor, because that was something we never wanted to forget, nor did we want to let anyone else forget it. It was a rallying cry and a battle cry. So you see, it was different back then during World War II. We were proud to be Americans, and patriotism was as natural as breathing. We flew the American flag because it symbolized all the good values our country stood for. So we flew it proudly. There was no equivocation. There were no gray areas. There was nothing to nuance. We were Americans. It wasn't Pollyanna. We knew our history, and we knew we lived in the greatest country that ever existed on planet Earth. So what happened so quickly after September 11th, 2001, to make us take the flags down and put them away? Well, just as surely as we had reasons to put them up, we had reasons to take them down. But I believe the reasons we took them down are not as clear nor as honorable as why we put them up. I think we intuitively got it right when we put them up and then got it wrong when we took them down. We didn't put the flags away because the terrorists had a change of heart, nor had they surrendered. In fact, according to all credible estimates, the war on terrorism had no immediate end in sight. So why did the flags disappear so quickly? Well, first let's try to understand exactly who put them up. Immediately after 9/11, certain groups of Americans expressed their patriotism by displaying flags, while others abstained completely. And I believe that those who did not display our flag were the same people who later influenced millions of Americans to take them down. They made it uncomfortable for those proud Americans who displayed our flag for all the right reasons by defining patriotism as something bad, as some kind of intellectually deficient concept to be shunned and derided. Then there were the American flag lapel buttons that so many of us wore back then. Remember them? Now think about who actually wore them. While it was common to see Republicans and others of moderate to conservative persuasions wearing American lapel buttons, with only a few exceptions, one was hard-pressed to find any hardcore liberal Democrats with them on. In fact, I'll venture that it was more likely to find 100 albino mules wearing purple top hats and singing God Bless America before you could find a single hardcore liberal Democrat wearing an American lapel flag. So maybe it just seemed like almost everyone was displaying our flag. Maybe it was overwhelmingly Republicans and independents, along with some moderate to conservative Democrats who put them up. I think the hardcore liberal Democrats took a pass on the entire patriotic flag-waving exercise. Apparently, not even the most horrendous attacks on our homeland ever motivated them enough to feel at least some sense of indignation, not to mention outrage. There is certainly a large amount of evidence to support this proposition. Look, consider this. Even before the smoke had cleared at Ground Zero, at the Pentagon, and at the field in Pennsylvania, many of these liberals were already telling us that we should have expected such a thing, that we deserved to be attacked, because we're not good people, that our sincerity, our intentions, our very reason to exist as a nation are all suspect. They tried to convince us that we're a dishonorable, greedy, imperialistic nation with a singular desire to suck the lifeblood out of every other nation in the world. They had already convinced millions of their liberal followers, our fellow Americans, to essentially hate America. They attempted to make us feel ashamed to be American. They ridiculed and demeaned anyone who unabashedly expressed their patriotism. I think it a safe bet that not a single one of these people ever said, "Remember 9/11? So even though we were at war against the demonstrably real enemy, whose sole purpose was to kill every American they could, we had no battle cry, because thanks to these liberal naysayers and their left-leaning media affiliates, there was no clear, clean, robust sense of identity and pride among millions of Americans. While millions of Republicans and some independents displayed full-fledged patriotism in the best sense, millions of liberals were acting like America-hating bashers of the worst kind. Look, for years, liberals have been playing a deadly smoke and mirror game in which they have convinced their political base, plus much of the world, including our enemies, that the United States of America is a bad country not to be trusted. Of course, they could not be more wrong. And if they had the desire and took an honest look at our history compared to all other nations in the history of mankind, they would know that we are the most honorable and the most giving nation ever. But for now, the answer to why did we put all the flags away so quickly is that too many of us allowed a minority of our citizenry to influence us about our national identity and to intimidate us into feeling embarrassed by our patriotism. Of course, that, my friends, is not only unacceptable on its face, it is a threat to our very existence. By any honestly informed measure, the United States of America is in fact the greatest nation in the history of the world. We must not only know that to be true, we must also truly appreciate our good fortune to be among its citizens, and to speak out and stand up against all unfair criticism and all attempts to destroy our national identity. So it's imperative that we have a clear understanding of what our flag represents. It's the symbol of all things good in America and of the uniqueness of those things. Our Constitution stands alone in the history of mankind. No other political document guarantees such freedom to its citizens or the protection against tyranny as does ours. It should also remind us of those who have sacrificed so much for the freedom we enjoy each and every day. But it doesn't end there. Our flag also stands for what we aspire to going forward, toward an ever-improving nation of people of goodwill. This is America. For good reason, people want in, not out. Fly our flag and feel pride in what it represents. It represents each and every one of us, and it tells the world who we are.